In 2006, TC and I co-directed Fairy Tale, which had Patrycja Kujawska and Aurora Lubos, our two fantastic female Polish performers, in the work. And we co-devised the work together, the four of us, which is probably the first time that we hadn't had any men in the room. And the idea was to make a 40-minute, which is a full-length show for children, aged probably 6 to 8, although I think some younger and some older kids ended up seeing it on tour. And the conceptual starting point to making Fairy Tale had been sort of in the air for maybe 2 or 3 years between TC and I around play and how we use play and improvisation, is the posh word, we use play to make stuff. And we use play to tap into the imagination. And of course that's what kids do. And so we wanted to make a piece that still had the sort of darker edge that Vincent Dance Theatre's work has, but was very much looking at two childlike characters in a sort of stick of the dump environment that they had created, with no adults present, to see how their play evolved. Originally, TC and Aurora were going to make the work together, but in 2006 TC was pregnant with her first child, Spencer, and so we asked Patrycja to step in. And it's interesting because we were going to work with TC and Aurora because of their roles as these battling twins in Punch Drunk in 2004. So in a way, the sort of relationship that they'd found in that much bigger piece of work we were taking forward. Anyway, that didn't happen. But Patrycja and Aurora also have a very interesting playful relationship, and so we capitalised on that. And the idea was to place children in an environment that they'd made out of junk, and to see what games emerged from that, and how for children repetition is a thing and making things out of nothing is a thing. And I designed the set for this, and it was basically a den that you could climb on or go into or build a canopy from and go to sleep under. And so it sort of, in my mind, appealed to all those things that kids love doing. And it's the only piece that we've made for children, and we love making it. Interestingly, as with Falling from the High Rise of Love, it had eggs in it. Seem to be obsessed with having eggs in the work. That could, you think they're going to eat the eggs and cook them, but actually they play with them and they break them. And so the darker side of Fairy Tale, which of course all fairy tales have a dark side, is that actually these children are quite lost and they're on their own and they don't have a parental guidance figure. And there's always this sort of undercurrent of, are they okay? They're playing these games, and some of the games are really manic and some of the dances are really crazy, and there's a lot of percussion-based music in it. But there's also the flip side that you see that I think children relate to, which is the quieter moments where you need some guidance and there isn't any. And so these two characters in Fairy Tale, Patrycja and Aurora's, lean on each other for comfort. And I mean, looking back now, I think again that's an interesting choice, that if you don't have parents, or if you're taken away from your parents, your birth parents, then you are alone, actually, and you do need comfort, and where do you seek that from? So it was sort of exploring that, light touch, but that was there. So they read each other's stories, and they go to bed under a watery moon, and they find solace and comfort in each other. But children should also have parents. As usual, the set and the props were in the space for the performers to come in and play with. And I'd sourced old tin baths and old tyres and crappy bits of wood and bits of guttering, and the idea was that they'd built this den in the woods somewhere. And the props became very integral to the action. There were some set dance pieces that were all about banging sticks and quite kind of folk music, the kind of Eastern European folk music that's threaded through a lot of my work. It's two Polish performers, and actually they talked in Polish. They They said a little goodnight story about, an imaginative story about a different world that wasn't as dark and as grotty as this one. They dreamt together in Polish about cakes and sunshine and nice animals in Polish. And again, we didn't translate it, we just kind of, the mood of it was such that children understood what they were talking about even though they couldn't translate it. So there was a mix of text, percussive movement, percussive music and movement created from the junk. And also a whole section, I think, which again I explored in Caravan of Lives in the opening scene of sort of passing plates and juggling and chucking things around, eggs coming down the guttering, catching them, throwing things. Quite sort of dexterous, juggling, for want of a better word, manipulation of objects. So the set was a real arena for play. And also we used a little bit, TC was very interested in puppetry, or, animating objects. So we used one of those 40s fox shawl things to become a fox character in a story. We used big coats to transform Patrizia and Aurora into these headless big puppets. So we were looking at transformation, which of course is the basis of any fairy tale, that something, you start in one state and you end up in another. And again, I mean, not to get too earnest about it, but there were two narratives. There's the narrative of the children, Aurora and Patrizia, playing childlike figures, living alone in a junk heap, which, let's face it, happens in India and Brazil and other places. And then this second narrative of how you lift yourself out of that through your imagination. And again, that's a metaphor for what we're doing in the company. We're lifting out into an imaginative or fictional world, somehow in order to survive, actually. I suppose what Fairy Tale started was a new era of performance without TC being on the stage for the company. And it consolidated the relationship between Aurora and Patrizia as two people that work very well together. And they're still in the work now, and they still work really well together. It also made me realise, I suppose, and I'm sure TC would say the same, that it's actually quite difficult to co-direct something because you're both pulling in the direction that you as the person with the vision wants to go in. And whilst I think we made a very successful piece that kids really loved, I think it's quite tricky to co-direct something when your vision is strong about how you want something to look. I haven't made a piece for children since 2006, although in 2016, 10 years later, I'm intending to work with 10 to 14-year-olds on stage, which is not young children, but that will be the next stage, I suppose, of working in a very different way with children, or for children, for a mixed audience. Should just say that kids loved the mess of Fairy Tale, and they loved the fact that adults were playing in the way that children play, and they loved the smashed eggs and the amount of soil and the junk and the dirt and the chaos that Fairy Tale. It was a very structured piece, but it looked quite chaotic and intimate, and I think children really responded to that.